Commonwealth has rested. That's right, you heard me. Day 23 of Karen Read Retrial has concluded and the Commonwealth has rested, and that means that they have closed their case in chief. Hi, my name is Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. The morning started off with a motion from the defense saying that they want to be able to question Welcher on Trooper Paul's reports and Dr. Scortabelli because their viewpoint is that he didn't just look at these, but that he actually adopted these reports and these conclusions, and those were the basis and the foundation for his entire analysis. Brennan came up and basically said that Welcher did not rely on these reports in any shape or form, and that he said that. And as you can likely imagine, Cannoni ruled in favor of the Commonwealth and said that the defense cannot go down the road of asking Welcher about Trooper Paul or Dr. Scortabello. When Dr. Welcher first got on the stand, Cannoni asked him to not look at his laptop and also asked him to not look at his smartwatch. And then he ended up just saying, oh, I'll take it off. That's a little weird. I wonder where that's coming from. And Alessi continued his cross-examination, and he asked Welcher that if Welcher knew that the glass on the bumper was not the same glass as the glass you had in John's hand, if that would change his outcome. And he said no, he didn't think so. He asked a lot of questions about the glass, and Welcher ended up saying that he didn't do anything more to determine where the glass pieces were from or follow up on that or anything. He discussed how that he used the Ring camera to basically use lasers and create this 3D model to show how these vehicles would interact with one another if they came into contact, and 3D images, and kind of show how this interaction to the cars went. But then he was also asked about the Ring camera and where it was located, and if this new Ring camera was located in the exact same spot, to which Welcher said no. But he also didn't measure the distance between the old camera, the new camera. There was a lot of questions about that, and the camera models and the distortion. So a lot of science things, and basically like how these things and not having these measurements and not double checking it really kind of makes his results kind of skewed in that they can't really be trusted. Welcher also admitted that it's possible that if the starting point of these cameras was wrong, then the results that came after could also be wrong. There was a point during this cross-examination that Alessi was basically like, Your Honor, he keeps making this motion like that I'm doing something with my hand. I'm doing nothing with my hand. I think it's very distracting to the jury. And, Judge Cannoni was like, hold on here. Okay, hold on. All right. And, it kind of calmed Welcher down a little bit there with his hand movements, I think. Then there was a lot of back and forth based on these renderings about whether they were Photoshop or whether they were like the 3D models. And then they moved into the area about the suspension of Karen's SUV. And Welcher basically said like, yeah, we just assumed it was the same as it was at the Canton Police Department. So that's basically how they did all their measurements. And Alessi was like, correct. You assumed. And we all know what assuming does. It makes an ass of you and me. And then on top of that, he also agreed that he did not know what the suspension was set at the night of the incident. Again, these little inches, these little measurements, they could make such a big difference. So that didn't look the best for him, I don't think. Welcher said that the SUV did not register her hitting John's car because it was too minor of an event. Then he also said that it didn't register her hitting John. And I'm sorry, didn't they say Karen was going 24 miles per hour when they hit him? They hit him so hard he went off his, out of his shoes, the taillight cracked and all these things, but the car didn't register that either. That was too minor. Again, in this situation where they say like if the SUV can't even register hitting John, how do they expect Karen to know that she did? And there was the morning recess. On a pretty brief redirect, Brennan basically had him agree that he had no concerns, that anything in his PowerPoint presentation was photoshopped, and that he didn't think the suspension of Karen's car had changed. On recross, Alessi asked him some more questions about confirmation bias. And again, that's where you get something and you try to make all the results look like that's what actually happened versus looking at the totality of the circumstances, looking at contradicting evidence or evidence that could change your outcome, things like that. And this makes sense to ask this because the paint test that he did where he showed like, oh, this is exactly how it would have been. He was standing in the perfect position where John would have had to been standing, have his arm extended, all of that for his viewpoint to be seen as like what actually happened or his depiction of it. But as he also said in his, testimony is that if there was even a slight change in inches or angle or anything like that, that could have a totally different outcome. So I think that, him showing that just shows this is like perfect case scenario, but they don't know any of the starting points. They don't know how he was standing or if this car actually even hit John. And he was excused. And I'm a little surprised that Judge Cannoni let his little comment of, oh my God, stay and not say something to the jury like the jury will disregard that. Brennan then played another clip from Karen's docu-series. And in this one is the one where she's like, well, could I have clipped him? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? She's questioning all these things. She said that she met with Unetti and hired him and kind of like told him the same things. And Unetti kind of told her that, yeah, you could have an element of culpability. And then the Commonwealth rested on that note. The defense will begin their case in chief beginning on Friday morning, and they have a potential witness list of 91 people. That's a lot. Now, are they going to call them? No. I am curious to see if they make a motion for directed verdict, meaning that the prosecution didn't meet their case and there's no jury in the world that could find that they did meet that burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Although with all the rulings that we've seen out of Cannoni, even if they did make that argument, I definitely don't think that she'll grant it. That wraps up day 23 and also wraps up the prosecution's case in chief. And here's what I want to know. If you've been following along, thank you for being here. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for the support. But here's my question. If the defense did not put on any witnesses or bring on any more testimony, do you think the Commonwealth has presented enough evidence to suggest that she did these things beyond a reasonable doubt? Let me know in the comments.